Why was she the only one still standing in the rain? The others had already moved back under cover, retreating to the glow of dim lamps inside the outpost walls. But she remained outside, boots sinking into wet gravel, arms crossed tight against the chill. Her eyes weren't on the storm. They were on the darkness beyond the wire. Somewhere out there someone was watching. She could feel it. The radio crackled behind her, voices muffled by static, but she didn't turn. The night smelled of wet dirt and burnt diesel. Every flicker of lightning cut the valley open like a wound. Brief flashes of mountains, ruined houses, broken roads. And in that half-light, her reflection in the mud. Sharp cheekbones, damp hair stuck to her temple, jaw locked in silence. The others thought she was waiting for weather to clear. They were wrong. She was waiting for the weight in her chest to pass, the one she carried since stepping off the plane weeks ago. That weight had no name, but it burned. She heard the boots behind her before the voice. "You're gonna freeze out here." It was Corporal Jensen, younger than her by a decade, eyes tired but kind. He always checked on her, as if sensing something she never admitted. She didn't answer right away, watching another fork of lightning crawl across the ridge. "I'll be fine," she murmured. Jensen shifted uneasily. "We move out at dawn. You should try to sleep." Sleep, the word felt foreign. Her body wanted it. Her mind wouldn't allow it. Because every time her eyes closed, she saw the same image. A small hand reaching, slipping from hers, vanishing into smoke. She finally turned, rain dripping from her lashes, her face half-lit by the guard tower's beam. You ever feel like, if you close your eyes, you'll miss something, something that matters? Jensen frowned, confused. He opened his mouth, then closed it again. He had no answer. He just nodded quietly and left her alone in the storm. She didn't blame him. Nobody had answers for what haunted her, not here. The mission briefing earlier had been clinical, precise. Satellite maps spread across a table, coordinates circled in red, targets labeled with cold acronyms. But what none of them knew, what she hadn't told them, was that one of those coordinates wasn't just a target. It was a graveyard. Her past lay buried there. The memory pressed forward before she could stop it, heat, screaming, the stench of smoke. The village she once called home had been torn open by fire. She remembered being dragged away by soldiers, her voice raw from shouting a name that was never answered. A sister, younger, fragile, her laughter once filling dusty courtyards, gone in an instant. And now fate had drawn her back to the same soil, except this time she was armed, trained, a soldier in her own right. But revenge wasn't what fueled her. It was something quieter, something that burned but never screamed. The kind of fire you hide because it could consume you if set loose. Inside the outpost, the team tried to laugh, to ease the edge. Someone told a story about home, about a father fixing an old truck that never worked right. Another mumbled about a daughter's birthday he'd already missed. Each word hung heavy, fragile. She listened from the doorway, unseen. They all carried ghosts, but hers carried her. The rain softened, leaving the air thick, metallic. She finally stepped inside, mud dripping from her boots, and the chatter dimmed. Not from respect, not exactly. From uncertainty. She had earned her place among them, but still she was apart. She dropped her pack, unstrapped her rifle, and sat against the wall. Silence wrapped around her like a second skin. When she finally spoke, it wasn't to anyone in particular. "How many of us make it back?" The room stilled. No one answered. The question wasn't tactical, it was personal. Jensen shifted again, the one who always tried. "We don't think about that, we just do what we can, one step at a time." She looked at him, really looked. His hands trembled slightly when he lit his cigarette. Not fear exactly, fatigue, weariness that went deeper than bone. And in that moment she realized, none of them felt invincible. None of them believed the lies they told themselves. They were just holding each other's weight, pretending it wasn't crushing. The night dragged and dawn bled slowly into the horizon. She cleaned her weapon in silence, the motion's ritual almost sacred. Each click, each slide of metal steadied her pulse. By the time the sun broke the ridge, her face was set. They rolled out in armored vehicles, engines roaring through broken roads. Dust rose in plumes behind them. Children watched from doorways as they passed, eyes wide, some waving hesitantly, some not at all. She stared back, expression unreadable, her fingers tightening on the strap across her chest. Hours later, the convoy stopped. The mission had begun. She was the first to step out, boots crunching on gravel, air vibrating with the hum of insects and distant echoes of war. The village ahead was quiet, too quiet. She scanned the rooftops, the alleys, every shadow. Her team fanned out, moving cautiously. Orders flowed in hushed whispers. She stayed focused, but her breath caught when she saw the cracked archway at the edge of town. She knew that arch. She had walked under it as a child, hand in hand with the one she lost. Her chest tightened, but she forced her body forward. Mission first, memory later. And yet every corner here was a wound reopened. The well where she once fetched water. The schoolhouse burned black. The fig tree that no longer bore fruit. Her hand hovered near the trigger. Sweat rolled down her temple despite the cool breeze. Then, a sound small, fragile, a door creaked open. The entire team froze, weapons raised. A figure stepped out. Not an enemy, not a soldier. A girl. Her age maybe 12. Eyes wide with the same fear she once carried. She clutched a worn cloth doll, its seams unraveling. No one moved. The tension was unbearable, like glass about to shatter. And in that instant, she wasn't a soldier. She was the child she had been, the one reaching through smoke, begging for her sister's hand. Her defiance, the one that had carried her this far, burned silently inside her. Not defiance against orders. Defiance against the fate that had stolen innocence, over and over. She lowered her weapon, slowly. The others hesitated, confused, scanning the rooftops for threats. But she stepped forward, palm open, voice steady though her throat ached. "It's all right," she whispered. The girl's eyes flickered, darting between her and the rifles aimed in every direction. For a moment, silence. Then, like the faintest crack of light through a storm, trust. The girl stepped closer. Somewhere behind her, a flare arced into the sky. Red, blinding, the world erupted. Gunfire, shouts, explosions tearing the morning apart. She spun, pulling the girl behind cover, heart hammering. Dust filled her lungs, the world shaking. Around her, chaos. Her ears rang, vision blurred, but through the haze she saw Jensen fall to one knee, firing wildly. Another soldier dragged him back. The commander barked orders, but the enemy was everywhere, hidden, ruthless. And still she held the child's hand. Because this time, she refused to let go. A blast rattled the ground, throwing her against a crumbling wall. Pain shot through her shoulder, sharp, searing. She gasped but tightened her grip on the girl, shielding her small frame with her own body. For seconds that stretched into eternity, there was only dust, fire, and the thunder of gunfire. Then silence, heavy, unnatural. She blinked, coughing, ears ringing. The village was a ruin of smoke and rubble. Bodies lay scattered, some moving, some not. Her chest ached, not just from the impact, but from the weight of what she had seen before, what she was seeing again. She looked down. The girl was alive, trembling, eyes wide with shock. Alive. She pulled her close, whispering words she barely believed herself. "You're safe, I've got you." But deep down, a question gnawed at her, sharp and merciless. For how long? What happens when silence feels louder than war? The gunfire had stopped, but the echoes still clung to the broken walls. Dust floated in shafts of pale morning light, turning the air into a haze of shifting ghosts. She stayed pressed against the rubble, arms around the girl, chest heaving with shallow breaths. Every nerve screamed for her to move, to run, but her body locked, listening, waiting. The ringing in her ears made it hard to tell, were the others still alive? A shadow moved across the smoke, boots, heavy, deliberate. She angled her rifle upward, finger on the trigger, pulse slamming in her throat. But then Jensen's voice, hoarse, strained. "We need to regroup, on me." She exhaled shakily, relief cutting sharp through her chest. He was alive, at least for now. She pushed the girl gently behind her, rising to her feet, weapon raised. Step by step, she moved toward the sound. Bodies littered the ground, enemy and friend alike. One of her team, Morales, sat slumped against a wall, clutching a bleeding leg. His lips moved in a half-prayer, half-curse. Another soldier dragged ammo crates into cover, hands slick with sweat and blood. It wasn't a victory. It was survival, barely holding by a thread. Jensen spotted her through the smoke, relief flooding his battered face. "You okay?" She nodded stiffly, eyes scanning every corner, weapon never lowering. "The girl with me." He frowned. "She'll slow us down." She met his gaze, firm, unyielding. "She stays." There was no argument after that. Something in her tone left no room for it. Jensen just swallowed, nodding once, and turned back to rally the others. The commander's voice cracked over the comms, strained but still carrying authority. "Contact came from the northern ridge. They knew we were coming. We can't stay exposed. Move to fallback point Bravo now." She tightened her grip on the girl's hand, guiding her through the debris. Each step was a battle, not just against the enemy, but against memory. The streets she had once run through barefoot as a child were now gutted, lifeless, strewn with wreckage. Every doorway whispered a reminder of what had been lost. But she couldn't let it slow her, not now. They moved fast, ducking through alleys, weapons sweeping rooftops, nerves stretched thin. The child stumbled, tripping on broken stone, and she crouched instantly, whispering soft encouragement. "Almost there, just a little more." The girl's eyes glistened, wide with fear but clinging to her words as if they were lifelines. They reached the fallback point, a half-collapsed building offering scant cover. The squad regrouped inside, breathing hard, every face drawn tight. Someone passed around canteens, the water tasting of metal and dirt. No one spoke at first. The silence was heavy, suffocating. Finally, the commander broke it. "We walked into an ambush. Someone tipped them off." The accusation hung in the air. No one met anyone's eyes. Her stomach twisted. She had known it deep down the moment the flare went up. Someone had betrayed their position, but who and why? Her gaze flickered across the room. Morale still pressed his bleeding leg, whispering between gasps. Jensen leaned against a cracked pillar, smoke curling from his cigarette, his hand still trembling. The others, all exhausted, broken in their own ways. Could one of them have done it? The thought clawed at her. She pushed it aside. Right now, survival mattered more than suspicion. The commander's eyes landed on her. "You picked up a stray. What's the story?" She shifted slightly. The girl pressed close against her side. "She's alone, no weapons, just a child." "Could be bait." The commander's tone was flat, pragmatic. Her jaw tightened. "Or she's just a girl in a war she didn't choose." A long pause. The commander finally sighed, rubbing grit from his forehead. "Fine, she stays for now, but if she slows us down." The sentence trailed, unfinished, but the meaning was clear. Her hand instinctively tightened on the girl's shoulder. Defiance burned inside her. She had lost one sister. She wouldn't lose this one, not while she still drew breath. The team licked their wounds, reloaded, checked comms, but she couldn't shake the unease. Her eyes drifted to the window, the jagged skyline of her ruined home beyond. She remembered the smell of bread from the old bakery, the laughter of neighbors, the music that once drifted on summer nights. All gone now, replaced by gunfire and ash. And yet here she was, walking these streets again, rifle in hand. The circle of fate felt cruel, merciless. She caught herself staring too long. Jensen's voice pulled her back. "You okay?" She blinked, focusing on his tired eyes. "Yeah." But the truth was more complicated. She was okay. She hadn't been for years, she was just good at pretending. The commander's radio hissed with static, then a fractured voice. Enemy regrouping, north sector moving fast. Every muscle tensed. They weren't safe here, not even for minutes. Pack it up, the commander barked. We move now. The girl whimpered softly as they filed out, but she soothed her with a hand on the shoulder, whispering calm words she barely believed. The squad pushed through rubble-strewn streets, every shadow a threat, every sound a possible death sentence. Halfway through an alley, the shot cracked. A sniper round slammed into stone inches from her head, spraying dust across her face. Instinct dropped her flat, dragging the girl beneath her. Shouts erupted, bullets tearing through the narrow space. Sniper east rooftop. The team scattered, firing upward, rounds sparking off brick. The alley turned into a death trap, echoes bouncing between walls. She felt the girl trembling against her chest, each sob muffled into her vest. She closed her eyes for half a second, centering her breath. Fear was natural. Fear kept you alive, but panic killed. She shifted, sighted her rifle through the chaos, scanning for the faint glint of glass, the shimmer of movement. There, just a flicker near a chimney. She squeezed the trigger. A sharp recoil, a flash, and the rooftop went still. The firing stopped. Smoke drifted upward, acrid, stinging her nose. The squad exhaled in collective relief, some muttering curses, others too drained to speak. They pushed forward again, faster now, desperate to reach higher ground before the enemy boxed them in. She kept the girl close, every sense sharpened. The child's presence was both a burden and a lifeline. A burden because she slowed their pace. A lifeline because holding onto her forced her to remember why she fought at all. The afternoon dragged into a blur of movement, sweat, and grit. They found brief shelter in another shell of a house, windows blown out, walls scarred with bullet holes. The squad settled, rehydrating, rearming, catching fragments of rest. She sat apart, the girl curled against her, finally drifting into uneasy sleep. She brushed a strand of hair from the child's forehead, and for a fleeting moment her chest eased. Jensen lowered himself beside her, his body heavy with exhaustion. He didn't speak at first, just sat there staring at the broken horizon. Finally he muttered, "Why do you care so much?" She didn't look at him. "Because someone once cared for me." He studied her, eyes narrowing, but didn't press. He knew better than to ask questions that carried more weight than answers could bear. Instead, he offered her his last cigarette. She shook her head. He lit it anyway, smoke curling in the fading light. As the sun dipped, shadows stretched long, swallowing the ruins. The commander signaled quietly. Nightfall was coming, and with it choices. Retreat wasn't an option. Neither was staying. She looked down at the girl, then at her rifle. Her heartbeat steadied, a slow rhythm of resolve. She didn't know how the night would end, but she knew one thing with absolute clarity: she wouldn't abandon her. Not this time. The squad moved again under cover of darkness, their silhouettes ghost-like against the wreckage. The air cooled, carrying scents of smoke and distant cooking fires. Somewhere, ordinary families tried to live, unaware or unwilling to acknowledge the war creeping closer. Every step deeper into the night tightened the knot in her chest. The mission's objective still lay ahead, the red circle on the map that had drawn them into this storm. But inside her, another mission burned just as fiercely. Not revenge, not orders, something quieter, more dangerous. Redemption. And in the silence of her own thoughts, she whispered a vow only she could hear. Not again, not this time. How do you tell the difference between silence that protects you and silence that betrays you? The squad moved under the cover of night, their boots muffled in the dust, rifles angled toward shadows that seemed to breathe. The moon was thin, a broken nail in the sky, barely spilling enough light to paint the edges of ruins. Every corner of the village felt alive, as if eyes were watching from behind shattered windows and fractured walls. She walked near the rear, the girl's small hand locked in her own. The child's breaths came quick, shallow, her little body exhausted, but she didn't complain. She just clung tighter. That quiet strength reminded her of another small hand years ago, the one she had failed to hold onto. The ache in her chest sharpened, but she buried it. Pain was a luxury. Tonight, survival was the only currency. The commander halted the squad near the edge of a collapsed courtyard. He raised a fist. Everyone froze, lowering to one knee, rifles raised. She strained her ears. At first, nothing but wind. Then faint, the scrape of metal, the whisper of a footstep too deliberate to be chance. Her pulse tightened, ambush. Before anyone could react, the night tore open. Gunfire exploded from two directions, muzzle flashes strobing like lightning. The courtyard became a killing ground. The team dove for cover, shouting, firing back into the unseen dark. She threw herself over the girl, dragging her behind a broken pillar. Concrete chipped under the hail of rounds. Dust filled her lungs, bitter and choking. The girl trembled but didn't scream. Shock had locked her voice away. Jensen's voice cut through the chaos, hoarse, desperate. "We're pinned. Flank fire from the ridge." The commander barked orders, voice steady despite the storm. But steady voices didn't stop bullets. One soldier fell flat, blood spreading across his chest. Another cried out, clutching a shredded arm. The night swallowed their agony, turning it into something hollow, unbearable. She pressed the girl down, heart pounding. Then she caught it, a gap in the fire, a rhythm. The shooters weren't random. They were herding them, driving them toward a trap. She leaned close to Jensen, who was firing blindly over rubble. "They want us moving west." He glanced at her, confusion mixing with exhaustion. "How the hell do you?" "Because I grew up here." Her eyes burned with certainty. "And I know how they think." For a split second, something unreadable passed over his face. Then he nodded, trusting her without question. That simple gesture hit harder than gunfire. She crawled low, pulling the girl close, weaving through debris toward a narrow alley she remembered from childhood. It was half hidden, choked with rubble, but it led around the courtyard, away from the trap. She signaled Jensen. He followed, dragging two others with him, covering fire snapping overhead. The alley swallowed them in darkness. The noise dimmed behind, though echoes still clung to the walls. She guided them through bends and broken archways, her memory sketching the path even after all these years. At last they spilled into a half-collapsed marketplace. Stalls lay overturned, rusting tins scattered, broken fabrics fluttering in the cold breeze. The silence here was different, watchful, waiting. Jensen's chest heaved as he leaned against a wall. "You saved our asses." She said nothing, scanning rooftops, every muscle wound tight. The girl pressed into her side, wide eyes darting everywhere. Then came a sound she hadn't expected, laughter. Soft, broken, but unmistakable. She turned sharply. Morales, the one with the injured leg, sat against a pillar, his face pale from blood loss. He was laughing, short bursts that turned into coughs. "What's funny?" Jensen snapped on edge. Morales wiped his mouth, smearing blood. "This place. I used to dream about seeing the world, getting out of the dirt back home, and look where it got me, bleeding out in somebody else's ruins." The bitterness cut deep. No one answered because they all understood. Her eyes softened despite the storm inside her. She crouched near Morales, pressing gauze harder against his wound. He winced but held her gaze. "Why'd you even bring the kid? You think saving one life makes up for all the ones we've taken?" The words pierced sharper than any bullet. She had no answer, not one she could speak aloud. She just looked away, jaw tight, hands steady on his bandage. His laughter faded into ragged breaths, the fight draining from him. The commander checked the map by the glow of a dim red light. His voice was low, urgent. "We're still 2 clicks from the objective. We move now before they regroup." 2 kilometers, through streets that were both battlefield and graveyard. She lifted the girl into her arms. Too slow on foot, too fragile. The weight was nothing compared to what it meant. The child buried her face in her shoulder, trusting her completely. That trust both healed and hurt. The squad moved again, slipping through alleys under the cloak of night. Each shadow felt alive, each silence a trap. Her senses sharpened beyond flesh. She felt the war as much as she saw it. Halfway through a crumbling street, Jensen caught her eye. His voice was a whisper. "You said you grew up here." She stiffened. "Yes." "Then why didn't you tell anyone?" Her throat constricted. She had no neat answer, only fragments of truth too raw to expose. She forced her voice steady. "Because this mission isn't about me." But inside, she knew it was. Every step closer to the objective pulled her deeper into memory, into the scars she had buried under years of silence and training. The team pushed into what had once been a schoolyard. Rusted swings creaked in the wind, shadows swaying like pendulums of time. She paused without meaning to, her chest tightening. She remembered sitting on those swings as a child, her sister beside her, feet kicking dust into the air, laughter spilling into the evening. The memory was so vivid it hurt. She closed her eyes for a second too long. A hand touched her shoulder, Jensen again. Not pushing, not questioning, just grounding her back in the present. His voice was low. "Stay with me." She nodded, swallowing hard, and kept moving. The schoolyard bled into a narrow corridor of houses, half collapsed, doors hanging from twisted hinges. Dogs barked somewhere distant, then silenced. The world felt suspended, waiting. The commander raised his fist again. The squad halted, weapons raised. A faint sound drifted from ahead, metal clinking, rhythmic, deliberate. An IED. She knew it instantly. The sound of wires, tools, preparation. Her blood chilled. They were setting a trap ahead, right where the map told them to go. The commander whispered harshly, "We circle east." But she shook her head. "No, east is mined. They want us to go that way." The commander's eyes narrowed. "How do you?" "Because I know these streets." Her voice was sharper now, edged with steel. "I lived here. I know where they'd set it. The only way is south, through the water channel." Tension crackled. The commander didn't like being challenged, but there wasn't time for pride. Finally, he nodded, gesturing south. They moved quick, down into the broken canal that once carried water through the village. Now it was a trench of mud and weeds, but it offered cover. Step by step, they pressed forward, the girl clinging tighter to her neck. Somewhere behind, distant gunfire echoed, a reminder of how close death trailed them. At last they crawled out of the channel, faces streaked with dirt, hearts pounding. They had bypassed the trap, but at a cost. Every movement burned strength they didn't have. They regrouped inside the shell of an old shop, glass shattered, shelves bare. The commander checked his watch, his face grim. "We're running out of time. Objectives close. One more push." One more push. Her muscles screamed. Her mind ached. But she looked at the girl, then at Jensen, then at the broken faces of the squad, and she knew she would not stop. The girl stirred, whispering for the first time, voice thin and trembling. "Why are they trying to hurt us?" Her throat closed. She wanted to answer, to tell the child the truth, that sometimes men became monsters, and sometimes monsters wore the faces of men who once loved their families, that sometimes the world wasn't fair, and innocence was always the first casualty. But she couldn't. So she just whispered back, soft and steady, "Because they're afraid." The girl blinked up at her, confused. But slowly she nodded, as if even that incomplete truth was enough. The squad prepared for the final stretch. Weapons loaded, nerves coiled. Outside, the night thickened, swallowing stars. She tightened her grip on the girl's hand. 2 clicks from the objective, 2 clicks from her past. And with every step forward, the line between soldier and survivor blurred into something she could no longer name. They say the closer you get to the truth, the heavier your steps become. For her, every stride toward the red-circled objective felt like walking into her own grave. The squad advanced through a maze of broken alleys, their shadows stretching long across walls scorched by fire and war. The child's hand was still in hers, small and fragile, grounding her in a way nothing else could. Around them, the night pressed harder, suffocating, as if the stars themselves refused to look upon what waited ahead. The commander's voice was low but firm. Half a click, eyes sharp, this is where it gets worse. As if it hadn't been bad enough. The team tightened formation, rifles raised, nerves wound like wire. Every face carried the same look, drained, beaten, but unyielding. They had all bled too much to turn back. Her chest throbbed with memory. She knew these streets better than she wanted to admit. She could have walked them blindfolded. And yet, they didn't feel like hers anymore. They belonged to ghosts now. Jensen's voice reached her quietly, a whisper meant only for her. "You okay?" A simple question, but it cracked something in her, because okay was a word that hadn't belonged to her in years. She nodded anyway. Soldiers learned early that silence was easier than honesty. Still, his gaze lingered, heavy with suspicion and something else, something she couldn't name. The squad slipped into an abandoned courtyard, weeds clawing up through broken tiles. The air smelled faintly of ash, the kind of scent that never left a place once it had soaked in deep. She froze, her breath caught in her throat. This was it. The red-circled objective on the map wasn't just coordinates. It was this place, a courtyard she knew too well down to the cracks in the stone. Once, years ago, it had been her home. Her knees almost gave out. The swing in the corner, rusted and bent, had once carried her and her sister for hours. The fig tree, now leafless and dying, had been where her father used to sit with his radio, humming softly while tuning to foreign stations. The fountain in the center, shattered now, had been where her mother washed clothes while singing lullabies that carried into the night. Her vision blurred, not from dust, from memory. And then it hit her. The trap was not a coincidence. This entire mission, this entire circle on the map, had been leading her back here. Her fists clenched, nails biting into her palms. The commander was already scanning the perimeter, voice calm, efficient. "Secure the area. They're here. I can feel it." She wanted to scream, to tell him what this place really was, that they weren't just stepping into an enemy stronghold, they were stepping into the ruins of her life. But her voice refused to come. The child tugged on her sleeve. "You know this place." She looked down. The girl's eyes were wide, innocent, unclouded by the poison of war, and in them she saw the reflection of her own haunted silence. "Yes," she whispered finally, "I know it." Gunfire shattered the moment. Bullets ripped across the courtyard from hidden rooftops. The squad scattered, diving for cover behind broken walls and fallen beams. The commander barked orders. Grenades arced into the night. Explosions thundered against stone. She dragged the child behind the shattered fountain, heart hammering in her throat. The roar of gunfire turned the courtyard into a storm of chaos, yet through it, she could still see fragments of her past. The swing swaying violently from the concussive blasts, the fig tree splintering under rounds, her home crumbling piece by piece under fire. It was more than battle, it was desecration. Jensen crawled in beside her, rifle snapping bursts at the rooftops. They were waiting for us. Of course they were, they always had been. Her mind raced, torn between survival and memory, and then she saw him. A figure on the far rooftop, tall, scarred, a face she knew. Her stomach twisted violently. It couldn't be. But it was. Her brother. Older now, harder, carved into something unrecognizable. But it was him. The eyes gave him away. Eyes she had once trusted more than anyone. Eyes that had once protected her when the world seemed cruel. Now those same eyes were locked on her down the scope of a rifle. The air left her lungs. For a moment the battlefield disappeared. It was just the two of them. Two siblings who had once shared bread, laughter, and secrets in this very courtyard. Two lives that had diverged into enemies by the hand of fate. She couldn't breathe, couldn't think. The commander's voice snapped her back. "Sniper North Roof, take him out." Her blood ran cold. They didn't know who he was, they couldn't. Jensen turned, aiming toward the rooftop. "No," the word ripped from her throat before she could stop it. Her hands shot out, pushing his rifle down. Jensen whipped his head toward her, shock flashing across his face. "What the hell are you doing? He's going to kill us." She shook, caught between instinct and loyalty, between survival and blood. "Don't shoot." The commander's eyes cut toward her, razor sharp. "Explain now." But before she could, a bullet snapped past, grazing Jensen's helmet. He cursed, firing back toward the rooftop. Chaos surged again. Soldiers screamed, grenades erupted, dust clouded the air. She couldn't see him anymore. Her brother had vanished into the smoke. She pressed her forehead against the fountain's edge, trembling. The child's arms wrapped around her neck, clinging with silent fear. And in that moment she knew. This mission was no longer about objectives or maps or orders. It was about reckoning. Her past had found her, and it carried a rifle. The firefight dragged on, brutal and relentless. The squad held the courtyard by inches, by blood. Morales went down, groaning, his leg wound reopened. Another soldier took a round through the shoulder. The commander's calm began to crack, frustration seeping through. But somehow they pushed forward. Roof by roof, corner by corner, the ambush weakened. The enemy scattered into the dark, leaving silence behind. When the last shots faded, the courtyard was a ruin within a ruin. Smoke curled against the dead sky. Bodies lay sprawled, broken, lifeless. The squad regrouped, bruised, battered, bloodied. No one spoke for a long time. The weight of survival pressed too heavy. The commander finally broke it. "We hold here until extraction. Mission's done." Done, as if war ever ended. She sat against the shattered fountain, the girl leaning against her, eyes finally heavy with exhaustion. But she couldn't rest. Not now. Her brother was alive, and he was out there. Jensen crouched in front of her, face streaked with dirt, eyes burning with questions. "Back there, you stopped me from firing. Why?" Her lips parted. No words came. How could she explain? How could she tell him that the enemy sniper they hunted was her own blood? The silence stretched too long. He studied her, suspicion deepening. But instead of pressing harder, he just said quietly, "Whatever secret you're carrying, it's going to get heavier. Don't wait until it breaks you." Then he stood and walked away, leaving her with the echo of his words. She stared into the broken fountain, into the reflection of firelight dancing across the water pooled at its base. And in that trembling image, she saw not a soldier, not a survivor, just a girl who had once belonged here, before war had stolen everything. The child stirred against her side, whispering in her sleep. A word, a name. Her sister's name. Tears stung her eyes, unseen in the darkness. The red-circled objective had been reached, but it wasn't a mission accomplished. It was a wound reopened. And deep down, she knew, the real battle was only just beginning. How long can silence weigh on a group before it cracks? That was the unspoken test they faced in the courtyard. The gunfire had stopped hours ago, yet none of them could sleep. Not really. They sat in the ruins, backs against walls pitted with bullet holes, listening to the distant sounds of dogs barking, the occasional crack of far-off gunshots, the restless hum of wind weaving through broken windows. The commander checked his watch every few minutes, muttering about extraction delays. Jensen paced in short bursts, shoulders tense, the way a man moves when his mind won't let his body rest. Morales lay on a stretcher, groaning through gritted teeth as someone tightened the bandage around his leg. His pain filled the silence like smoke fills lungs. And she sat by the shattered fountain, the child curled against her side, both of them too awake to surrender to sleep. Her brother's face still haunted the smoke. Every time her eyes drifted, she saw him. Not the enemy sniper who had nearly ended her squad, not the scarred man hardened by war, but the boy who used to sneak her sweets when their father wasn't looking. The boy who once swore he'd never let anyone hurt her. She pressed her palms against her face, dragging them down slowly. Her heart begged for honesty, to speak the truth out loud, but fear choked her. What would the squad do if they knew? What would the commander order if her secret became fact? She was caught between blood and duty, torn in a way no bullet could ever tear. The child shifted against her. "Why are you sad?" Her throat tightened. She glanced down at the girl, eyes wide open, staring up at her with that unnerving, innocent clarity only children carry. "I'm not sad," she whispered. The girl frowned. "Yes, you are, I can feel it." For the first time in days, her lips curved, faint and broken. "You're braver than most grown men I know." The girl tilted her head, curious. "Was this your home?" Her chest constricted. She couldn't lie, not to her. "Yes." The girl's voice softened. "Then why does it feel so empty?" The question sliced deeper than any wound. She had no answer, only silence. Jensen appeared from the shadows, crouching close, keeping his voice low so others wouldn't hear. "You've been staring at nothing for an hour." She looked at him. His face was pale with exhaustion, eyes bloodshot but sharp, always sharp. "Just thinking," she said. He studied her carefully, too carefully. "Thinking doesn't keep people alive out here." "Sometimes it does," she replied, softer than intended. He didn't argue. He just leaned back on his heels, watching her like a man weighing a truth too fragile to touch. The commander's voice cut through the night. "We're splitting watches, two awake at all times. We hold until sunrise or extraction, whichever comes first." The order rippled across the squad like a stone in water, grumbles, nods, silent acceptance. Soldiers knew the drill. She volunteered for first watch. She needed it, needed the distraction of scanning rooftops instead of the torment of closing her eyes. Jensen joined her, settling beside the fountain, rifle balanced on his knees. For a while neither spoke. The courtyard seemed quieter now, like the ghosts had retreated deeper into their shadows. The girl finally drifted into sleep, her small hand still clutching at the hem of her jacket. Jensen broke the silence. "You saved her." She blinked. "What?" "In the firefight. You pulled her out of the open. You didn't even think, just moved." His voice was steady, but there was something beneath it. Admiration, maybe, or disbelief. "Why risk yourself for her?" Her gaze stayed fixed on the rooftops. "Because no one saved me." The words slipped out before she could stop them, and once spoken they hung heavy, impossible to take back. Jensen turned to her, eyes narrowing slightly. "You mean back here, this place?" Her jaw tightened. She had revealed too much. She could feel the secret pressing harder now, screaming to escape, but she couldn't let it, not yet. "Yes," she said finally, her voice a razor-thin whisper. Jensen didn't push further. Not tonight, but she knew he was piecing things together, slowly, carefully, and when the time came he wouldn't let it slide. The hours dragged, stars faded. The black sky began its slow bleed into gray. The squad shifted restlessly, fatigue heavy in their bones. And then, just as dawn began to stretch its pale fingers across the courtyard, a sound carried through the ruins. A whistle, low, familiar. Her blood froze. It was a tune she knew, a tune from childhood, a lullaby her mother used to hum while cooking, one her brother had picked up and used to tease her with when she cried. The whistle echoed faintly through the ruins, distant but deliberate. Her heart slammed against her ribs. He was here, he was close. Jensen heard it too. His head snapped up, rifle raised, eyes scanning the broken rooftops. Contact. The commander hissed for silence, signaling the squad to tighten. Weapons lifted, shadows sharpened. But she knew before they did. She knew it wasn't a random signal. It was meant for her. Her hands trembled as she gripped her rifle. She wanted to run toward the sound, to chase it, to demand why, how, when. But her duty anchored her in place, iron chains around her chest. The whistle faded. Silence returned, heavier than before. The squad shifted uneasily, nerves spiking. "They're toying with us," someone muttered. She said nothing, but inside her heart broke open all over again. Her brother was alive, and he still remembered. By mid-morning, the extraction still hadn't come. The commander swore under his breath, frustration turning sharp. "We're not sitting here waiting to be surrounded again. We moved to secondary LZ." The squad gathered what little strength they had left, loading their wounded, checking ammo, whispering prayers into dry lips. The girl clung tighter to her hand, refusing to let go. The march out of the courtyard felt like tearing her soul away from the last pieces of her family's memory. She wanted to look back, wanted to memorize every broken wall, every scar of home. But she forced herself forward, each step heavier than the last. They pushed through alleys, rifles high, eyes sharper than sleep should allow. Every sound threatened to be the last thing they'd ever hear. And then movement. Figures in the distance, too far to identify but not far enough to ignore. The commander raised his fist. The squad froze. She lifted her rifle, peering through the scope, her breath caught. Among the figures, half hidden behind stone, she saw him. Her brother watching, waiting. Their eyes locked through the glass. Her finger hovered near the trigger. The weight of duty screamed, "Fire." The weight of blood whispered, "Don't." Her chest shook, sweat slicked her palms. And in that fragile second she realized the decision would come. Not now maybe, not here, but soon. She would be forced to choose. Duty or blood, squad or brother, life or betrayal. The figures slipped back into shadow, vanishing like smoke. The commander signaled to move. The squad obeyed. But she carried the echo of that stare, heavy as the rifle in her hands. And she knew silence would not save her much longer. How far can exhaustion bend a soldier before it breaks them? By the third day without proper rest, she could feel her body slipping into a blur, steps blending into steps, sounds dulling, vision hazed by fatigue. But her mind refused to dull. It stayed sharp, stabbing her with memories she wished would vanish. The squad moved in tight formation along the valley floor, shadows stretching thin against the rock. The wounded were carried in turns, every grunt and stumble puncturing morale. Supplies were thinning, water almost gone, ammo scarce. The radio crackled with static and fragments of command, but no confirmation of extraction. Every face showed the same hollow hunger, the same refusal to admit the truth. They were stranded until someone decided otherwise. She marched near the front, rifle slung low, the child's small fingers woven into hers. The girl hadn't spoken in hours, as if she too sensed the weight pressing on them all. Jensen trudged beside her, head low, jaw clenched. Every so often his eyes flicked toward her, searching, questioning. He hadn't forgotten her outburst in the courtyard. He hadn't forgotten the whistle. Neither had she. The tune haunted her, gentle, familiar, cruel. It whispered through the valley wind, carried in her own head, reminding her of everything she had lost and everything she still hadn't told. At midday, they stopped under the shade of a fractured ridge. Men collapsed against stone, breaths ragged. Morales drifted in and out of consciousness, his face gray with pain. The commander stood apart, radio pressed to his ear, barking at static. His frustration bled into the air. "They keep saying stand by. We've been standing by for 36 hours. What the hell are they waiting for?" No one answered, no one could. She knelt beside the girl, offering the last sip of water from her canteen. The child drank slowly, eyes darting between the weary soldiers. "They're scared," she whispered. The words stabbed deep. Children should never have to know that look. Jensen crouched beside her, voice low. "You've been holding something back." Her pulse jumped. "I've seen you freeze," he continued. "I've seen you look at shadows like they're more than shadows. Back there, you knew something." She forced her face still. "We all knew something. We all knew it was a trap." He shook his head. "Not like that. You recognized someone." Her chest locked. He was closer to the truth than she wanted. "I don't know what you're carrying," he said, leaning closer, "but if it puts this squad at risk, you better make a choice. Soon." She swallowed hard, forcing down the rising tide of panic. "And if it's not that simple?" He studied her, searching her face, but before he could answer, the commander's voice cut sharp. "We move." The squad gathered, weary but obedient, falling into step once more. By dusk, the valley tightened around them. Steep walls rose on both sides, shadows deepening into choking dark. Every sound echoed: footsteps, rocks shifting, the wheeze of Morales's breath. She felt it before she heard it. A prickle down her spine, the familiar tightening of air that came when a predator was near. Then gunfire. The ambush came swift and merciless. Bullets ricocheted from rock, dust exploding in clouds. The squad dove for cover, shouts filling the canyon. She dragged the child behind a boulder, pressing her body over hers, shielding her as stone splinters cut the air. The commander shouted orders, men firing blindly into the ridges. Jensen rolled into position beside her, snapping bursts up toward the cliffs. "Where the hell are they?" someone cried. She knew. She didn't have to see him. She could feel him. Her brother was here, pulling the strings, orchestrating the chaos like he always used to orchestrate their childhood games of hide and seek. Only now the stakes were blood. Her scope found movement, shadows darting along the cliff edge. She fired, rounds sparking against stone, figures dropping. But her heart raced, terrified of the one face she didn't want to see in her crosshairs. A flash of metal caught her eye, a sniper's glint, her breath caught. Through the glass she saw him again, her brother. This time there was no mistaking it. He wasn't hiding. He was staring straight at her. Their rifles aimed at each other, locked in a deadly symmetry. Her finger trembled on the trigger. "Shoot, don't shoot, duty, blood, squad, family." She froze. A shot cracked loud, sharp, final. But not hers. The round slammed into the rock inches from her head, showering her in stone dust. Her brother had missed. No, not missed. Deliberately spared her. Her stomach twisted. He was telling her something, a message only she could understand. Jensen grabbed her arm, yanking her down. "You should be dead," he shouted over the chaos. "Why didn't he?" She cut him off, voice raw. "Don't ask." His eyes widened. He knew. Maybe not everything, but enough. The firefight raged for what felt like forever, echoing through the canyon until the enemy finally withdrew, slipping back into the rocks like phantoms. Silence fell heavy, broken only by the groans of the wounded and the ragged gasps of survivors. The commander cursed, slamming his fist into stone. "We're being hunted. They know every move we make." Jensen looked at her, not with suspicion now, but with accusation. "Because someone out there knows you." The words hit like a blade. She had no defense, none that wouldn't betray her secret completely. Her hands shook as she reloaded, eyes fixed on the ground. "It's not that simple." Jensen's voice was sharp. "It never is, until it gets someone killed." She said nothing, because he was right. Night fell, wrapping the canyon in suffocating dark. They set up a hasty perimeter, weary and fraying at the edges. Morales was barely hanging on. The others were little better. She sat alone, the child's head in her lap, Jensen's words circling her skull like vultures. Her brother had spared her, twice now. That meant something. But what? Was he warning her to leave? Was he daring her to choose? Or was he waiting for the moment she would break? Her chest ached with the weight of it all. Duty on one side, blood on the other, and somewhere between them her own fractured soul. She closed her eyes, hearing the lullaby whistle again in the wind. hearing her sister's laughter echo from a past that felt both close and impossibly far. When she opened them, tears blurred her vision. The child stirred, whispering in her sleep, "Don't let go." The words struck like lightning, because that was the truth of it. Every choice she had made, every defiance that burned within her, it wasn't about revenge. It wasn't about survival. It was about never letting go again. Not of the child, not of the squad, not of the last fragments of her family. Even if holding on meant breaking. Morning would come soon, and with it, another march, another ambush, another impossible decision. And she knew her silence wouldn't hold much longer. Her brother was closing in. And so was the truth. The dawn came cold and colorless, washing the canyon in hues of gray. They rose in silence, shoulders heavy, rifles heavier. Every step sounded like a verdict, every glance carried suspicion. The squad was no longer a unit. It was a collection of broken men stitched together by necessity. Trust had frayed, unraveling thread by thread, until only a handful of strands kept them from turning their weapons on each other. She felt those stares most of all, especially Jensen's. The child clung to her hand as they moved, her tiny grip a reminder of innocence that shouldn't have been dragged into war. Each time the girl looked up at her, she wanted to weep. She wanted to confess everything, not to the squad, not even to Jensen, but to herself. To finally say aloud the truth she had carried like a blade pressed against her ribs. Her brother was alive, and he was hunting them. By midday, the canyon opened into a plateau scarred with ruins, the skeletal remains of stone huts and broken walls. The commander called a halt, scanning the terrain. "This'll do," he muttered. "Set perimeter, we'll rest and wait for word." The men dropped their packs with relief, some collapsing outright. Jensen didn't. He stood, rifle slung but ready, eyes locked on her. She felt his gaze even as she tried to ignore it, tending instead to morals, who clung stubbornly to life. His breath rattled, each inhale a battle, each exhale a surrender. She pressed a damp cloth to his forehead, her hands steady though her heart thundered. Jensen finally broke the silence. "We need to talk." The words cracked the fragile quiet like glass, heads lifted, eyes turned. The commander frowned. "Now." "Yes, now," Jensen said. His voice carried steel, the kind that cut whether you wanted it to or not. She froze, hand still on Morales's brow. "What's this about?" the commander asked. Jensen's stare didn't waver. She knows something, and it's getting people killed. The air thickened. Her pulse raced. She wanted to stand, to shout, to deny, but her knees felt rooted to the dirt. The commander's face hardened. "Explain." Jensen took a step closer to her, his voice low but sharp. Back at the ambush, the sniper had her dead to rights, twice. Didn't take the shot. You ever wonder why? Murmurs rippled through the squad. Her throat burned, words clawing for escape but finding no air. Jensen's eyes pierced her. "I think you know him. I think you've known all along." The silence that followed was worse than shouting, worse than bullets. It was the silence of men realizing trust might already be gone. The commander's gaze swung to her, hard, expectant. "Is it true?" She opened her mouth, but nothing came. The child pressed against her side, whispering, "Don't let go." Her hands trembled. And then finally the words came, barely audible but enough to shatter the air. "Yes." The squad erupted. Shouts, curses, boots shifting against dirt, rifles lifted, lowered, lifted again. The commander's voice cut through it all, low and dangerous. "Explain, now." Her breath shook as she stood, every eye stabbing into her. "He's my brother." The words echoed, heavy and damning. For a moment no one moved, no one breathed. Then chaos. "Brother, you've been leading us into this." "Christ, we're walking into his arms." The commander roared them down. Shut it, all of you." The noise died, leaving only the rasp of breath, the pounding of blood. The commander's glare locked onto her. "You've got one chance, tell us everything." Her chest heaved. Her voice felt raw, dragged over broken glass. He wasn't always like this. We grew up together, we fought together, we lost everything together. When the war took our home, it took him too. I thought he was dead. For years I thought he was gone, but he was. He survived. And somewhere in that survival he turned into this. A shadow, a ghost. She swallowed hard, forcing herself onward. He leads them now, the ones who ambushed us, the ones who won't stop until we're ashes, and he knows me. He knows how I move, how I think. That's why he's always one step ahead, because he's not just hunting soldiers. Her eyes burned with tears she couldn't stop. He's hunting me. The squad stared as though she had gutted them all. The commander's jaw clenched. "And you kept this secret." Her voice cracked. "Would you have trusted me if I hadn't?" The silence that followed was its own kind of answer. Jensen finally spoke, softer but no less cutting. "You should have told us." Her chest ached. "And then what? You'd have shot me, left me behind, I couldn't." He cut her off. "We deserved the choice." The words slammed into her like a blow. She turned away, clutching her rifle as if it could hold her upright. The child tugged at her sleeve, whispering again, "Don't let go." But her grip on everything was slipping. Night fell heavy. The squad's fire burned small, casting jagged shadows against the ruined walls. No one spoke to her. They sat apart, muttering low, their eyes dark with betrayal. She sat alone, the child asleep against her chest, the weight of her confession pressing down like stone. Jensen approached finally, crouching opposite her. His face was unreadable, but his eyes carried the storm. "You should have trusted me," he said quietly. Her throat tightened. "I couldn't." "Why?" "Because I knew what it would cost." "And now?" She looked at him, tears glinting in the firelight. "Now I think it's going to cost more." He exhaled, long and weary. "He's not just your brother anymore. He's our enemy. You know that, don't you?" Her voice broke. "Yes, and that's what terrifies me." They sat in silence, the fire crackling between them. Finally Jensen spoke again. "Then we finish this, one way or another." Her heart clenched because she knew what he meant. And she knew what it would demand of her. The next morning the sky burned crimson, a warning, a promise. The squad packed in silence, eyes hollow, jaws set. She tightened her grip on the child's hand, her rifle slung across her back. Her brother was close. She could feel him like a shadow stitched to her skin. And she knew. The next encounter would not end with mercy. Not for her. Not for him. Not for anyone. The morning carried no birdsong. Only the hollow scrape of boots against dirt, the clink of metal against gear. They marched across the plateau like ghosts, each man swallowed by his own silence. The child walked beside her, small fingers wrapped around her own, clutching with a desperation that dug deeper than words. Morales had slipped away in the night. His body was left wrapped in canvas beneath the ruined stone wall, a crude cross pressed into the earth above him. No time for grief, no time for ceremony. Only a promise whispered under breath as they walked away. Her chest burned with it still, a promise to carry him forward, even though she barely carried herself. By midday, the plateau narrowed into a throat of stone that funneled them toward the ridge. That's when the world went still. The wind died. The air thickened. And she knew. He was here. The first shot cracked the silence like thunder. Stone burst inches from Jensen's head, spraying dust into his eyes. He dropped, cursing, rifle swinging up. Contact. Chaos erupted. Men dove behind broken walls, bullets sparking off stone. The child screamed, and she dragged her small body into the crook of a shattered boulder, shielding her with her own. The sniper's second shot rang out, echoing like a heartbeat across the canyon. Not rushed, patient, measured. Her brother's style. She tasted iron in her mouth as memory crashed over her, training beside him in fields of dirt, whispering strategies in the dark, his hand guiding hers when she missed her mark. Now his scope was on her. Her chest heaved as Jensen's voice ripped through the air. "We've got to flank him. Move." The squad shifted, laying down suppressive fire. But it was useless, every burst answered by silence. Every silence answered by a shot that came closer than the last. He wasn't aiming to kill them all, not yet. He was hurting, controlling. Her brother wanted her. She rose before she could stop herself, rifle clenched tight. "Stay down," Jensen barked. But she shook her head. "He won't stop, not unless I face him." Jensen's eyes locked on hers, fierce, desperate. "That's suicide." Her voice cracked, low and trembling. "Maybe it's the only way." She moved before anyone could stop her, slipping between bursts of fire, weaving through rubble. Her heart pounded in her ears, but her feet carried her with a certainty she didn't understand. The canyon swallowed her as she pressed forward, leaving the squad behind, leaving Jensen's shouts swallowed by distance. And then silence. She stopped, breath ragged, body trembling. A voice drifted from the rocks above, low, familiar. "You finally came." Her chest constricted. She tilted her head back, scanning jagged stone until she saw him. A silhouette crouched against the ridge, rifle angled casually across his knees. Her brother. Older now, hardened, his face carved by war, eyes hollow but burning, yet still beneath it the boy she once knew. Her voice broke as it left her throat. "Why?" He rose, stepping into the light. The rifle never wavered. "Because the world took everything, and I refused to bow." Her lips trembled. "So you burn it instead." His jaw clenched. "They made me into this. They carved me hollow. You think I wanted it?" Her rifle sagged at her side. She couldn't raise it, not against him. "They're not your enemy," she whispered. "Not the way you think. They're just trying to live like we did, like we swore we would." He laughed, a sound sharp and broken. "Live, look at them, look at you. You call this living, crawling through dust for scraps of survival." He lifted his rifle, scope glinting in the light. "I gave myself to the fight, and the fight gave me purpose." Her heart ached so violently she thought it might tear. "And what about me? Did you give me up too?" His finger tightened on the trigger. His voice cracked, almost human again. "I should have, but I didn't." The gun wavered. For the first time his aim faltered. And she knew this was her only chance. Her rifle lifted, heavy as a mountain. The sight found him, chest broad, face shadowed. Her hands shook, her vision blurred. She saw the boy who once shielded her from bullets, the brother who stole bread so she could eat, the soldier who carried her when her legs gave out on endless marches. She saw the man who now hunted her, who killed without pause, who had driven men she trusted into the dirt. Her finger hovered over the trigger. Tears spilled, hot and unrelenting. "I can't," she whispered. "You must." The voice came not from him but Jensen. He had followed, crouched behind cover, rifle locked on her brother. "Stand down," Jensen urged. "Don't do it, let me take the shot." Her chest tightened. If Jensen fired, it would be clean, efficient. It would also kill what remained of her brother without hesitation. But if she didn't, more of them would die. The child's voice echoed in her mind. "Don't let go." Her brother's eyes met hers, filled with a sorrow too deep to mask. "You don't belong with them," he said softly. "Come with me, we can end this together." The world held its breath. Her rifle pressed into her shoulder, her finger curled. And she made her choice. The shot cracked the air. For a moment time fractured, dust hung suspended. The canyon echoed like a hollow drum. Her brother staggered, eyes wide, blood blooming against his chest. He dropped to his knees, rifle slipping from his grip. Her own rifle smoked in her hands. She fell to her knees, sobs tearing loose, body shaking. Her brother's eyes found hers one last time, soft, unguarded. "You were always stronger," he whispered. Then he was gone. The squad gathered slowly, eyes heavy with something between pity and relief. No one spoke. Even Jensen said nothing. The child crawled into her lap, arms wrapping around her neck. She buried her face in the girl's hair, her tears soaking into it. The war raged on beyond the canyon, but inside her silence. Not victory, not pride, only silence. They buried him at the ridge's edge. No marker, no name, just a pile of stones stacked by tired hands. She stood longest, staring down at the cairn, wind tugging at her uniform. The commander finally spoke, voice rough. "We move." One by one they drifted away, boots crunching across gravel. Jensen lingered. He met her eyes, no judgment in them now, only understanding. "You did what you had to," he said. Her throat ached. "No, I did what I couldn't avoid." He nodded once, then followed the others. She remained until the horizon swallowed their shapes. Only then did she whisper, voice trembling into the wind. "Sometimes dignity doesn't speak, it simply acts." Her fingers brushed the last stone, pressing it into place. Then she turned, shoulders heavy, steps slow, carrying the child and the silence of a choice that would never leave her. And as the canyon swallowed her figure, the cairn remained, a quiet reminder that even in war, the greatest battles are not fought with rifles, but within the heart.